Hello everyone, Tina here from Bittersweet Quilt Shop in Pinconning, Michigan. So the holidays are just around the corner, and today we're going to go ahead and start our very first session of Jingle All The Way. I'd like to thank Karen Montgomery for asking me to go ahead and teach all of you wool applique and a little bit of embroidery as well. And we will be working out of, this is the book by Debbie Bugsby. And so hopefully you picked up one of these books up from a symposium shop. And we have numerous of them that will have the book, or they will have the wool kit, maybe an accessory kit, and the thread kit for you. I will go ahead and list those in the comment section. I'll go ahead and shoot you a listing of any of the stores that have the supplies so that you don't have to go around looking for them. You'll see a little comment section, and I will also ask Karen to go ahead and place those in the files here on 9 Patch a Day in the top under the files section. You will also find a supply list there, and that is the supply list that you will need for the entire duration of the 6 weeks of videos. The only item that I missed from that, I'll talk about it later, and it's just something very small, and I'm sure all of you can find what that little item is. All right, so let's just go ahead and get started. The very first project we're going to do is going to be the easiest one, and it's this little tiny gingerbread bowl filler. And Karen said she loves little gingerbread men, so we're going to start out with this one. And if you've never done wool applique, no worries, because this is probably one of the easiest things to start on. So we'll start here. Please do not feel intimidated by this if you've never done it. It is actually very relaxing once you get going. Because if you never have done any kind of handwork, you might be a little stressed over doing this. But I promise, if you give this little guy a try, I think you might find that wool applique is a lot of fun and it is relaxing. So I'm going to go ahead and talk to you about what you're going to need. First, you're going to need the wool that we're going to use to make that project, which is going to be black. This is my brown, which is the gingerbread color. And then this is my green, that's going to be my holly. So these are the 3 pieces of wool that I have. These came in the kit that we sold in my shop. So those are those colors. You're also going to need a piece of fabric. Now in my kit, I put a 1/4 yard of a woven in here. We're going to use this twice during these sessions. So that, of course, is the background for this. And it's going to be the background and the backing for that little pillow. And of course, you have to have your book because all of your patterns are in this book. So please, if you have not purchased this, please go ahead and buy one now because they have been a little difficult to get. But I think that by now, every store that's going to carry them will have them in stock, okay? This has been done by C&T Publishing, which we love C&T Publishing. We always need to support our publishers because, unfortunately, a lot of them aren't surviving. So please support any of them that are doing any kind of crafting, all right? You're also going to need thread, and you can use what I'm going to use, which is Valdani size 12, and I have 5 spools here. These are the colors that are matching the wool that I just showed you, plus I'm using red for my holly berries, and let's see, you can also use floss. So if you already have a lot of floss like DMC or Cosmo floss, which we love Cosmo because it's like the silk thread of embroidery. It's a wonderful thread. If you do not want to invest in Pro Cotton, you're like, oh, I just want to give this a try, please do not go out and buy Pro Cotton. Try your embroidery floss. You're going to need 3 strands at a time. So embroidery floss is 6 strands. You're going to take it, pull it apart. Some people take 1 piece at a time, pull it all apart, and then put it back together. You don't really need to do that. You can just take 3 strands, and pull it apart by holding it up. It will unwind, and then you'll have 2 separate sections. When I cut my thread to put in my needle, I never go longer than about 18 inches. And the reason being is so that it doesn't knot up as you're going through. And the longer you have it, the longer you have to move your arm away from your body. And it just makes it more difficult. And it's real simple to knot off and start again. We're also going to be using chenille needles, and I have these wonderful chenille needles. They come in a tube. These are done. These have been designed by Lisa Bonjean of Primitive Gatherings. We will use 2 different kinds. This is a size 22 or a size 24. Now, you don't need both. You only need one. So for the purpose of this class, I will be using the larger needle. And the larger needle, just so you can see it on the video a little bit better, is, let's see, this is going to be the size 22. Okay, it has a larger eye. Let me see if you can see this. It's really hard to tell on video sometimes. There you go. Can you see the eye? And then this is the size 24. I just want you to compare the sizes. I'll back it up a little. Okay, so either one will work. If you are new, I highly recommend the larger needle. When I stitch, I use the smaller needle, but I've been doing this a long time. It just floats through everything a little bit easier, but I will be using the 22 to get going. All right, if you have a hard time threading a needle, I would recommend maybe a needle threader. These are new by Dritz. They're called the Woodland Needle Threaders. There are 3 of them in a pack, and they have 2 different size ends on them. So the end that I'll be using is the larger end, because what happens with the needle threader, it goes right through the eye, just like so. See, I already have it through the eye of the needle. And then you grab your thread and then you pull it through. This end of the needle is super, super small. And you can also use this if you like. So these are brand new by Dritz. They just came out this year. We will be using a stabilizer in the wool applique that I'm teaching. Now in the book, she does not talk about a stabilizer, but I've been doing this a long time, and in my shop, we use stabilizers because, and not only that, the designers are all using stabilizers as well. I mean, pretty much all of them. I don't know any that doesn't. So the best stabilizers that we have found that work with wool there are 2. There's Heat and Bond Feather Light, and it's paper on one side. You'll see the glossy side on the other. Or Steam A Seam 2 Light. Comes in a package like so. You can use this for wool. You can also use it for cotton. And this package, I think there are 5 sheets in the package. The difference is this one has 2 sides of paper, but one side, if you can see this, has a yellow graph. The side with the yellow graph is the side that you actually draw on, and then the side that's the plain white paper is the side you'll pull away and discard. All right. Are there differences between them? Absolutely. This one, the Feather Light, is extremely lightweight. It can stick to your paper sometimes as you're tracing it. And then the Steam A Seam 2 Light is a little bit thicker. It can get a little gummy on your needle sometimes as you're doing wool applique, but no worries. Just kind of rub your fingers together on your needle. It'll come off. You can also just have a little alcohol pad and use that to take the residue off your needle if it gets too gummy for you. Both of them hold on about the same. I would say the Steam A Seam 2 Light holds them on better, definitely, because it's thicker. All right. And another item that you're going to need to have is a fine tip Sharpie marker. We use this because it does not smear on our paper, doesn't get onto our wool. And then when we use our little iron to iron on the paper, it doesn't leave black marks on the sole plate of your iron. If you were to use a friction pin or anything that goes away with heat, that's a no-no, because what you're going to do is you're going to iron on the paper to press it down onto your fabric in a little bit, and then your pattern will be gone. So don't make that mistake. Many of us, including myself, have done that. The scissors I'll be using today are Karen K. Buckley Perfect Scissors, the blue medium ones, and the green ones that are for applique. And I love these 2. I recommend them all the time. We've sold hundreds and hundreds in my store. These are super, super fine. Look at that tip on there. And they have serrated edges, and they do come with a sheath that goes over that goes over the blades, because you definitely want to make sure that this is on when you're packing it up and you're leaving to go wherever, so it doesn't poke and get you. I always recommend writing your name with your Sharpie onto the sheath so that you don't misplace this, or if it falls on the floor because it's clear, you may not see it, or maybe you're in a class and someone else has the same scissors. Always write your name on your scissors, like this right here. See, I have my name right on the sheath, and then if you open my scissors, right there is the name on of my business, which is Bittersweet Quilt Shop. Okay, it's so simple to lose a pair of scissors. I'm sure many of you know that. And then of course hide them because you don't want anyone else using these. All right, so I think we are ready to begin. Those are the things that we'll be using on this session, session number 1, to make the little gingerbread man. You're going to find his pattern instructions on page 83 and 84 of the Jingle All The Way book. All right, let's get stitching. All right, everyone, here we go. We're going to go ahead and start our project. So the very first project we're doing is going to be the little gingerbread. You're going to find him on page 83 in the book. And on page 83, you're going to find the materials list, which we've already discussed earlier. And on page 84 is the actual pattern for this gingerbread man. So what we're going to do is you can use one of 2 different products. The one I'm going to use for this one today is going to be the Heat and Bond Featherlight. Now I already went in and I traced this, but I want to talk about this product. So one side of it is paper and one side of it has a glossy substance on the back of it. That's an actual stabilizer on the back. So what you do is you place this down, so the stabilizer is actually over top of your pattern. So we're going to trace the gingerbread body, and I'm going to lay that down on here. Now if you're in a humid area, sometimes this Heat and Bond Featherlight, if it's tacky because of humidity, it can stick to the book. That's one of the flaws about it a little bit, but it's not humid here, so I'm not going to have an issue with it. So, but if it is a little humid, just don't press too hard onto the piece of paper while you're tracing this out with your Sharpie pen, okay? So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and trace out my body with my Sharpie pen. And this piece actually has 3 components. It has the body of the gingerbread man and then 2 different holly leaves. So what I've done is I'm using a piece of scrap because I use all kinds of scrap. I don't throw this stuff away very often. So, and I went in and I traced the one holly and then I traced another holly. You always want to make sure that you leave space between your pieces of at least 1/4 of an inch. And the reason why is when we get ready to cut this out, I'm going to cut this out with an 1/8 of an inch allowance all the way around it. So that's how you would do this if you were using the Heat and Bond Featherlight. If you're going to use the Steam-A-Seam 2 light, I want to show you this. I'm hoping you can see this, but this has a yellow graph on it on this side. This is the side where the yellow graph is that you actually would lay it down and trace on it. And this is the side you print on. Then there is another side to this, and it actually is a piece of paper. This is actually going to get peeled away and exposes. Once you peel it away, it will expose the stabilizer in between this. So I'm just going to try to pull this back so you can see. The stabilizer needs to stay on the side where the yellow graph is, okay? So if you start to pull this away and the stabilizer comes away on the paper side where there's no graph, use your fingernail and push it back over onto the side with the graph, because that's the side where your pattern would be, okay? But what's nice about this is when I put this on here, even if it was humid, it would not stick onto this. All right. So for this one here, this gingerbread man, we're going to go ahead and we're going to use Steam-A-Seam. Heat and Bond Featherlight. So as you can see, I've already gone ahead and traced out my items. So I'm going to move my book out of the way and I'm going to bring over my little gingerbread man. I've already traced him and I've cut him out. And I also have my 2 little, there we go. There are the little holly leaves. So as you can see here, I've left an 1/8 of an inch allowance all the way around. You do not cut your paper out on the line. Okay, all right, and there's a reason why. So let's get out our gingerbread color. Let me see here, I just had that out. Here we go. And I'm using a piece of my gingerbread brown that I have. There we go. And now I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to press him down. The reason why we leave an 1/8 of an inch all the way around is so that way when we get ready to cut this out, after I press this down, I'm going to use dry heat to press him down. And I'm not ironing this down. I'm actually just going in an up and down position with no steam. When you have paper, you don't use the steam, all right? And I usually will set this on here, I don't know, 3 to 4 seconds, pick it up and move it over. If you were ironing it this way, what could happen is you could melt the product, the stabilizer, and smear it onto your wool. So that's why you just want an up and down position. And then it also, not only would you do that, but you'd also get the stabilizer on the sole plate of your iron. All right, so once you do that, there we go. We'll just get him on there pretty good. Now, some people have asked me in the past, does wool, felted wool, have two different sides? Is there a right and a wrong side? Well, with this piece of brown, there is not. See, it's the same on both sides. But I'm going to use this piece that is hand-dyed. This is a piece of hand-dyed holly. And as you can see, there's variegation within the piece. So what I want to do with this holly is I want my holly to be a little bit lighter, but I'd also like a little variegation. So I'm going to go over to this corner. I cut a piece of holly out earlier on this, but I want this side to show. So that means I'm going to, so that both sides are different. So what I want this side to show. So I'm going to place my pieces, my pattern pieces on this side. It's almost like you're making a sticker, if you kind of think about it that way. Because when I'm done cutting this out, then on the back of it, it's going to be sticky, just like if it were a sticker. So there we go, up and down, 3 to 4 seconds. Now remember, felted wool is a fiber made of animal hair, of sheep. And I know some of you are probably going, well, I know that. But some people may not know that felted wool is, you know, it's wool, it's from a sheep. So if you ever dye it yourself or you felt it yourself, it's going to smell like a wet dog in your house because it's pretty strong. Okay, and as we're going through and I'm teaching you some lessons, I'll talk about wool and how it gets felted and how you can felt it yourself. And I don't dye my own wool because I don't want to deal with any of the dyes. I have it actually processed with a dye company, and the one that I use the most in my store is Primitive Gathering out of Wisconsin. So if you have ever been there, they have wonderful dyers. They have their own recipes for each color that they have, and their wool is fantastic. Now, don't get me wrong, there are other companies that do felted wool, and it's they are just as good, I'm sure. So choose what you love the most. All right, so now what I'm doing is I'm cutting out my pattern, and as you can see now, I'm cutting on the line, and that's how we're going to cut out our entire gingerbread man. All right, so I'm going to cut him out all the way around, and I'm going to use my other pair of scissors, my green ones, to cut out my little tiny holly leaves there. I want to cut this one out because I want to show you how to adhere this onto another piece of wool. So in this project, my gingerbread man is cut out here first in the brown, and then in the pattern, she has you she actually has you put this down on another piece of wool, and then later on, we're going to put it on the background, which is the piece of woven fabric, as you can see here. So right now what we've done, we've cut out the little gingerbread man. This is what he looks like. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove the piece of paper off the back, which is the stabilizer. And as you can see, the back of my wool looks nice and shiny. Now, if you have small pieces of this paper, like when I go to do these little leaves, sometimes what we'll do is we'll score the piece of paper with a pair of tweezers. So you can just score it like that, and then grab a hold of it and grab a hold of your wool, and then you can actually pull this whole piece of paper off. Well, this is a large one, so I really don't need to do that with this one because this one's easy to do. But if you had small pieces, that's how you would get your stabilizer off the back of it. Okay, so now let's just kind of think about this as a sticker. See how this side is not glossy, this side is, this side has the stabilizer. All right, so what we're going to do now is we're going to adhere him onto this piece of wool. And look at this. Look how much room I have. Now, she had me cut this 5 by 6, but realistically, I don't need to use all this because later on, I'm only going to cut 1/4 inch all the way around him. So I'm gonna save some of this because this would be, if I put this right in the middle, look at all the wool I'm going to waste. And I'm really, frugal when it comes to my wool. And some of you are probably going, oh, it's okay. No, it's not really okay, because felted wool is expensive. So we want to make sure, even though I might have, maybe I have a piece of wool that's only 1 by 1, I save that, because sometimes a piece of 1 by 1, well, could make a leaf or a petal or something. So I always save my scraps of my wool. Okay, so here we go. I've placed him on this other piece of wool. Now this time, I'm going to take my heat, and I am going to use, whoops, oh, hopefully my camera doesn't get too steamy. I hope not. This is that new Alicio, that M3 Pro. Boy, does this thing steam like a trooper. I'm not going to steam too much because I'm not sure if my camera will get too steamy. Now, I don't have paper on the back of this now, so that's when you can go ahead and you can use steam on it, because steam is always hotter than just dry heat, and it really does help melt the stabilizer into your foundation. Okay, so there we go. Got that in. All right, so we're going to let that cool for a second. And then what she says in the pattern is she wants you to come in here and she wants you to stitch this down. I forgot, I got to stitch this down before I start cutting them out. So we're not going to cut them out. We're going to stitch them down next. Now I'm going to go ahead and cut these out. And then I'm going to come back in a second and I'm going to show you how to go ahead and get ready to stitch this. All right, so I have gone ahead and I have cut out my holly leaves. As you can see, I've removed the paper. So we're going to set those aside for a second. And what we're going to go ahead and do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to teach you how to do a blanket stitch. And for sake of the camera, I am going to go ahead and do it in my light colored thread. In my sample, I did use my brown thread that matches. But I did another sample earlier today, and I did this all the way around in this lighter color thread, and it looks cute that way as well. But for camera sake, for teaching this and so you can see it, I'm going to go ahead and use a light color thread so you can see the definition of the thread. Now, to thread my needle, you can do it 2 different ways. So I'm going to show you this way by using one of these little threaders. I'm going to go ahead and put the larger side of this through the eye of the needle, and it just sits over there. Okay, I'm going to loop my thread around my finger, and I'm just going to grab it with the hook. I kind of hold my thread with my fingers, and then I pull it through. So you can do it that way if you like. I'm going to show you the way my friend Lisa taught me how to thread a needle quite a few years ago, and it does take some practice, but I'm going to show you how to do it. All right, so I've looped the thread over my finger, and I'm sorry my fingers are looking pretty rough because I've been dealing with wool for a while, and they're starting to really dry out. Okay, so this is the flat side of my needle. I am using the larger needle, the size 22. I lay the flat side right on top of my thread. Now, my thread is sitting kind of on the bony part of my finger. And I'm going to lay it on there. I let go of the thread. I push the needle down, and then I pull the needle toward me. And can you see how that pushed the thread right into the needle? Now, it's going to take some practice if you've never done this before to get that in there. But please don't give up, because it took me quite a few times to get used to it. And then once you it clicks and boom, you've got it, and you can actually do it in the dark almost. Okay, so now I'm going to go ahead and put a knot at the end of my thread, and I'm going to show you how I knot the end of this. I'm going to take my needle, I'm going to lay my thread over top my needle, and I'm going to, where the thread and the needle meet, that's where the knot's going to be created. So I'm going to hold it there. I'm going to go ahead and pinch it with my finger and my thumb. I'm going to wrap my needle 1, 2, 3, 4 times. You could do 3, but I'm going to do 4. All right, so now my needle is wrapped. I'm going to just pinch that together with my finger and my thumb again. So it's all in my finger. I'm going to grab the needle and I'm going to go ahead and pull. I'm going to stay pinching. And you just pinch and pull your thread. Pinch, pinch, pinch. Don't let go of it. And voila, there's your knot at the very bottom of your thread. I'll show you that a couple more times if you didn't catch on to it right away. Let me grab my needle. Again, we're going to create a different knot. How's that sound? Lay it over top of your needle. Hold it with your finger and your thumb. Wrap the thread 1, 2, 3, 4. Pull it all down. Pinch it between your finger. Hold your fingers together, and then not so tight that you can't pull your needle, but pinch that knot. You can feel it. Pinch it and then pull it all the way to the end. There you go. There's another knot. I'm going to cut that first knot off. All right, that's how you knot a needle. All right, here we go. So I'm going to teach you how to do a blanket stitch. We're going to start on the long side of his body, and we're going to stitch all the way around his body. So when you do a blanket stitch, you're coming in. So I am coming in from the outside. So from the black wool is where my needle is. It's right next to my brown wool. It's not in the brown wool, it's in the black wool, but right next to it. I come straight up, bring it all the way. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come in 1/4 inch. I'm going to go in and I'm going to come back out right next to the thread. That's my very first stitch. I'm sorry, I'm going to move some of my supplies here. All right, then I'm going to pull it. There we go. That gives me a nice straight stitch. It's 1/4 inch here. My next stitch now, I'm going to take my thread. I am right-handed, so my thread, I'm going to always push to the left side. If I were left-handed, this needle would be in this hand, and I would be using this thumb to hold down my thread. This thumb, I really refer it to as my tension thumb, because I'm holding it out of the way, but I'm also putting tension on the thread. The next stitch, you're going to come over, we came in 1/4 inch, now I'm going to come over 1/4 inch. I'm coming in the same depth, and I'm coming over the distance the same amount, okay? Now when I come out, see how my needle is over top of my thread? It has to be over the top of this thread. The thread should be at the bottom, and that creates a blanket stitch. So now I'm going to pull it away from my body. I'm going to give it some tension. It's very important that you give it tension. Otherwise, you're going to get looping as you're stitching. Okay, so I pull it away from my body, straight out, and I loop it over to my left. I'm using my thumb to hold it down, and now I'm going in 1/4 inch again, and I'm going 1/4 inch in between. Now I'm just doing, whoops, I just pulled my thread out. Now I've got to rethread my needle. I'm going 1/4 inch in between. You can do 1/8 of an inch in between if you want, and do some tiny stitches. That's perfectly fine. Whatever works for you, you just do that, okay? However you want. All right, I'm hoping you can see these stitches. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way around my gingerbread man. Run as fast as you can. Can't catch me. I'm the gingerbread man. Do you remember that? Okay, here we go. I'm going to go all the way around this. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get to a corner. When I get to this corner, I'm going to take a stitch this way and one stitch that way. I'm going to do that same thing to his little armpits and around his neck. So I'm going to stitch this, and I'll come back in a second with him completely stitched, and we'll go from there. Okay, as you can see, I've gone ahead and I have stitched all the way around my gingerbread man. And now what I'm going to do is I actually still have my thread in here because I wanted to show you when you end your last stitch, just take your needle and go down like right next to the thread where it's still coming up, okay? You've made your last stitch, go straight down, come to the back. All right, now what you're going to do is you're going to grab a stitch that's nearby. So I can see this one right here. I'm going to grab that stitch. I'm going to run my thread through there. There we go. I'm creating this loop. I'm going to go through that loop 1, 2 times in the same direction, and then I'm going to pull it all the way taut, and that is a little surgical knot, and that is not going to slip out. And that's how you knot off your last stitch. Okay, so with this pattern, she has you do a little something unusual. You're going to go ahead now and you're going to cut your gingerbread man out and just eyeball this, guys. You don't have to get exact. I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to go around him completely all the way around and create a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around him. Just take your time and just cut all the way around. All right, so while I'm doing this, if you ever buy wool on a bolt, like in my store, I sell wool on a bolt, just like if it's fabric. And it runs, I don't know, anywhere from $38 a yard to $48 a yard. It just depends on if it has a texture or not. It could be a plaid, it can be a woven wool. The cheaper ones, usually the ones that are like $38 a yard, are usually solids. Depends on the wool company that we buy it from as well. But anything like that on the bolt, and I'm just talking about this while I'm cutting this out, is not going to be felted. Okay, that is wool. I mean, some people buy it to make, oh, let's just, for instance, I had a gentleman that needed a new Santa Claus outfit. He plays Santa, and he was having someone make him a new costume. So he needed wool by the yard. And normally it comes anywhere from 45 inches to 58 inches. Okay, so now that I've cut this all out, I'm gonna go ahead and I wanna just apply a couple little pieces of stabilizer on the back because I need to adhere him to another piece of fabric. And so I just want a little bit of stabilizer. I don't need a lot. I'm just using scraps. That's really all I'm doing. Let's cut this one apart. Okay, so going back to wool by the yard. So when you buy wool by the yard, it is not felted. Okay, so, and then you can use it to make a skirt or anything that you want. You don't have to felt your wool, but when you felt wool, what you're doing is, whoops, oh, that one didn't stay on, did it? Hope I got this hot enough. Okay, remember, we are just pressing, we are not ironing. So up and down, so let me get my iron going here. So going back to the wool by the yard, that's how you would purchase it. Now, if you were gonna buy felted wool from me, first of all, if it's been dyed, it's already gone through the heat process that makes it felted. So what happens when you felt wool is you wash it in extremely hot water. So let's say I wanted to felt a 1/2 yard of black wool and I bought a 1/2 yard on the bolt. I would bring it home. I do have a front loader, but you could have a top loader, it doesn't matter. I'm going to throw it into my washer on the hottest setting there is. Like on my front loader, I have a sanitary, let's see, what do I want to say? A sanitary, I'm sorry, I'm totally at a loss for words here. Oh, a sanitary button, let's just call it that. A setting, there we go, that's what I want to call it, a setting. All right, so I put it on the sanitary setting because it washes in hot water, and it also rinses it in hot water, the very hot. Okay, so that's what I would do. I would not add any laundry detergent to it. However, I personally add about a 1/2 teaspoon of Dawn dish soap. That's what I've always done. Okay, we let that cool for a second. So then I'll wash it and agitate it. And then after it's done spinning out and everything, and of course, like I told you before, your house is going to smell like a wet dog. I'm going to go ahead and pull this off the back now so that I've got this on here. Then I'm going to take that piece of wool and I'm going to throw it in my dryer. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to dry it on the hottest heat that I have. And what happens is it takes the fabric, which has a warp and a waft, and it just goes like this. That's a good example, okay? And it makes it super tight. It gives it a lot of denseness, and that is how we felt wool. If you have someone that's dyeing your wool, they're already doing that process because in order to dye it, they have to do it in a hot bath. Okay, here we go. Now I'm gonna apply, okay, so now again, this has got some stabilizer on it. This is my background piece. She had you cut this 5 inches wide, 6 inches long. I'm gonna just eyeball him, put him right in the center. There we go. So that is kind of how, and just really a quick way of just telling you how to felt wool. Not rocket science, not at all. Okay, now that I'm going to put them on, I'm going to use my steam. Because now I've got to get through, 2 layers of wool to adhere this to this. Okay? So I'm really going to give it a lot of steam. There we go. So once I steam this down, what I'm going to do is go around now, and I'm going to blanket stitch the black using my black thread all the way around. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to, after we're done doing that, we're going to add on our holly, and I'm going to teach you how to do a whip stitch. So we'll go ahead and end for a second, and then I'll start back up and I'll show you how to do a whip stitch. All right, everyone. Now that we have applied our holly, as you can see here, I pressed that down and I did use some steam to apply the holly. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and stitch down my holly, but I'm going to use my cream colored thread just for the simple fact that you can see it so much better in the video. Instead of me using my green thread here, it would just really hide the green color. It wouldn't be easy to see. So I'm going to start it out with this cream colored thread. I'll show you how to do a whip stitch, but then I'm going to go in ahead and cut that out, and then I will finish in my green thread. So when I do a whip stitch, I go ahead and come up all the way through my bottom layer of wool. I'm going to come up on this corner here. I am on the outside of my appliqué piece, just like I would begin when I'm starting out a blanket stitch. So I bring that all the way up. I'm going to now take and this is a small item, this little holly. So I'm going to take very small stitches, usually about 1/8 of an inch. So the first stitch I'm going to take in is going to be straight in from where my thread came up out of the other piece. I'm going to go in. Now listen, you do not have to go through all these layers. Right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4 layers going on here. All I'm going to do is catch the green and catch this brown. When I get over here, I'll just catch the black, and I get out here, I'll just catch the background. So I'm coming in straight in, but now I'm going to come out on an angle about the same distance away, about 1/8 of an inch. All right, so that creates one straight stitch. I come straight in 1/8 of an inch, but I'm coming out on an angle. Whoops, there we go, in and then out on an angle. This is, oh, I just lost my needle. Yes, I lost my needle. So I just came unthreaded. So let's fix that real quick. There we go. All right. So I come in straight, 1/8 of an inch, because this is a small piece. I come out on an angle, 1/8 of an inch. And when I come out on that angle, look at this, I have too long of my thread here, so I'm going to shorten that up so I don't keep catching it in there. There we go. I'm coming in and out. Now you could, if you wanted to, do 1/4 inch away. It's completely up to you. I'm just giving you my suggestions, and if you wanted to blanket stitch this, you could. Does it necessary? No, not really, because you're just going to stitch this little appliqué piece in. It's not necessary to go ahead and do a blanket stitch. There we go. Now the reason why we come in straight from our thread is so that our thread stays straight as well. And as you can see back here, I got a little bit of an angle, but it's okay. Now because normally I'm going to be using the same matching color, but right now you can really see that. It's pretty obvious. All right, I'm coming to a corner. I'm going to take one more stitch at this corner, but I want you to pay attention to this. I'm coming in straight for my threads coming up out of the background, but this time I'm going to take it in and I'm going to come out over past the corner. I'm going to go around it. So I take a stitch there, and now see my thread is on the opposite side. All right, now I'm going to come in. I'm going to come back in that hole. I'm hoping you can see this. I'm going to come back in this hole where I took that stitch in, right, like this. I'm coming out on an angle. That is how I take a corner, and it helps lay this corner down straight. Do you see a little V now? Because I use the same hole twice. So let's just go ahead and get over here to the next corner, and I can show it to you one more time. And this is completely how you do a whip stitch. There it is. Come on an angle. All right, last one in. I'm going in, but now I'm going to come out on this corner. So I come in here, turn my needle, I'm going to come out this side. Pull it straight, turn my project. I'm now on the other side of this piece of holly on the corner. I'm getting my thread out of the way. I'm going to come into this hole, but come out on the other side of the holly. Get my thread out of the way here. There we go. And I'm going to make sure my thread is on the other side. I have to use your needle to push it down. And see how I caught that corner, and I've got a little V stitch here. All right, I'm going to go ahead and finish this up in my green. But I thought if I use this cream, you could really see how the stitches lay and how to do a whip stitch. All right, I'll be back with you in a second. All right, everyone, I have just finished whip stitching on my holly. And now I'm going to show you a different stitch. Now in the book, she mentions doing a French knot to make the holly berries. I am not going to be using a French knot. I'm actually going to be making a colonial knot. So I'm going to teach you how to do that. You go ahead and thread your needle, get your knot in the bottom. Wherever you want to put a holly berry, just go ahead and come up from the bottom of the project. Come straight up. You're going to take your needle and your thread, and they are parallel to each other. You're going to take the needle, cross over the thread. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm wrapping my needle 4 times. I'm holding on to the thread. Now you've seen me put my finger on the thread, kind of holds it on my needle. I'm going to go straight back down right next to where I came up. I'm going to pull this just a little bit just to put some tension. It also pulls the knot all the way down to my surface. I'm going to put my thumb there, push my needle through, and I slowly pull my thread so I don't create a knot before I get to the knot, if that makes sense. There you go, and you can see pull, 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 and there is a colonial knot. I use colonial knots more than I do French knots. Matter of fact, I barely ever make a French knot because I like the way, some parallel, I like the way a colonial knot looks, and I can make it quite large by wrapping the thread thicker. I'm sorry, not thicker, I don't want to say thicker. I can wrap the needle more times, which creates the knot to be thicker. And if I really want a very large knot, I can double up my thread and then go across 2 layers of thread. So one more time, I'll show you one more time. I'm parallel, needle goes over, I wrap 2, 3, 4. Stay consistent with how many times you do wrap, whatever you decide. If you want 3 wraps, 4 wraps, 5 wraps. There we go, straight down. Then I pull slowly. See how it's all bunching up? You don't want to do that. Let it pull it apart if you have to a little bit. There we go. And there we go. So that is the colonial knot. I'm going to take my needle out right this moment, leaving my thread here because I'm going to jump over to my cream colored thread. Let's bring that up here. And I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do a chain stitch. On this pattern, I've used a friction pin, which goes away with heat. And I've marked here, 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 and here. And you'll see that on the pattern that they've done a chain stitch there. And I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do a chain stitch. There we go. I've got a knot in my thread again. I know I've got my red thread still attached because I'm going to come back and finish doing probably 5 little holly berries right over top of all of my holly here in the center. All right, I'm going to do the leg first because it's a larger space. You can probably see this better. I'm coming up from right where I want to start my chain stitch from underneath the project. I pull my thread. I kind of just use my thumb. I'll come back down into my wool, all right? And then I'm going to not go through all my layers of wool, only the top brown. I'm coming right next to this thread. And then I have to decide how long do I want this chain to be. So I'm going to take a 1/4 inch stitch And as you can see, I'm going over the thread. There we go. I'm going to pull it. Get this out of the way. All right, see how now I'm over top of this loop. There we go. That's my first little chain, but I kind of got to lock them down a little bit. So now the second stitch, you're going to go inside of the loop right next to this thread. There we go. I'm only going through the tan, and I'm taking about 1/4 of an inch stitch. And this is going to be the next chain. There it is. Remember, I'm inside of the loop. Now I don't pull a lot of tension on this chain, otherwise it's going to close up your loop. All right, so going inside of my loop right next to the other thread, only going through the brown, coming at 1/4 inch, and here we go. Ta-da! And that's how you create a chain stitch. I do draw a line there so that I stay straight with my chain. Okay, all right, I'm going to go ahead and finish chain stitching all 4 sections and finish up these colonial knots, and then I'll be back and we will wrap this little gingerbread man up. All right, everyone, I'm back again. I've already finished doing my chain stitching here and here. I finished my colonial knots, and another stitch I forgot to show you is she did in the book show you just to do a long straight stitch here and then cross over on both ends. So I did go ahead and do that, and that's just a plain long stitch right there. Okay, so now my gingerbread man is somewhat finished. Now she has added a button. I'm trying to find my button. I just had it here. Let me see. I gotta find it in my little pack. But what you could do at this point is go ahead and apply your button right now if you'd like. And I believe when you look at the photo in the book, that's what she has done. She has applied the button right now. However, I will not be doing that. I will be applying my button after I put my entire pillow together. And the reason why I do that is I go through the entire pillow and cinch it toward the back of the pillow, and it creates the pillow to kind of cinch down a little bit. I like the way that looks, so you can choose either way. Okay, so what she tells you in the book is you'd cut another piece of background fabric, same size as this, right sides together, sew all the way around, and then she has you snip a piece of the backing. She'll have you cut a piece of the backing, opening it up to turn it inside out. I am not going to show you that technique. I'm going to show you something that Karen Montgomery teaches when she makes table runners, and I just feel this is a nicer way of the way it looks, so I'm going to teach you that way. So what I've done is taken a long piece of the background fabric. See how it's much longer? Probably a good inch on both ends. Okay, so what I did is I cut that. The width is the same. All right, and then what I did is I cut it in half. I put it right sides together, as you can see in my sample here. Then I've gone in and taken a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I back stitch here. I sew in about 1.5 inches, back stitch here. Pick up my needle, come down here, back stitch here, and finish and back stitch here. So I've created a seam and a seam allowance. See it? So that way when I open this up and I go to the iron, and I'll press this down nice and flat. All right, so that's been pressed. That creates this little opening here. But see how it's finished? It's finished here. Now, you could, if you wanted to, come in and stitch this down. But this is just a little craft pillow. I'm not going to do that. If I was going to do a regular pillow, this is not how I do it, like a pillow for my couch. But if you were going to do that, I would come in and stitch this down. All right, so now I've got this ready to go. I've got it pressed open. My hole's here in the middle. This is the finished side, so this is the right side. Take my gingerbread man. I'm going to put him down, facing down. I'm going to make sure that this opening is in the center of the project. I'm going to pin all the way around it, and then I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch all the way around. I'm going to trim off the excess piece down here at the ends, and then we're going to flip him inside out. All right, I'll come back, and then I will go ahead and show you how to finish this project up. All right, everyone, I have my little gingerbread pillow all finished now, so I just wanted to show you. When you sewed the back piece on, remember they were right sides together. Once you go around a 1/4 inch all the way around your project, also snip the corners on each corner. That allows so you don't get a lot of bulk up here in these corners, okay? And then you're gonna turn it inside out. And then I went ahead and I used fiber fill to fill my project. And I do want to mention the fiber fill that I used is called Perfect Loft. It's made by Pellon. I just want to show you the fiber, how this comes. It's in tiny little clumps. And when I make projects, this is the only fiber fill I use because it's not in these huge chunks. This makes stuffing your projects like plush toys, I don't know, pet beds, pillows, stuffed animals. This is what I teach and I use in my store because it doesn't get clumpy in your project. And I'll show you, just let me see here. I brought over this little Tilda doll. This is the Tilda, I think it's the Garden Angel, but what I want to show you, I made that in class last year. What I want to show you is look at her skin. See how it's not clumpy? And sometimes look how thin her leg is. So we use this in the store all the time. Again, it's called Perfect Loft by Pellon. And it's because we use this so that nothing looks clumpy. I almost say it almost looks like cellulite if you don't use a good, if you don't use a good fiber fill. Okay, so that again is what I use. And oh, here's the package. Let me show you this. This is the insert that goes inside of it. Oops, let me just turn it this way. There's 16 ounces, and it's 30% more fill power than a standard fiber fill. And guess what? What I like about this the most, it's made in the United States, I guess, because not only is the product wonderful, but it's made here in this country. All right, so then I finished filling it. I whip stitched the opening up in the back using either regular thread. Today I did use a piece of my pearl cotton just to whip stitch that, but look how nice it looks. And then I put my little button in the center and I started from the back, brought my needle up the back into the center of my project and brought my, put my button on, tied it off in the back. But do you see how it looks a little puckered, a little tufted? I like the way this looks. All right, everyone, I hope you enjoyed making our first project, which is the little gingerbread bowl filler. It's very simple to do. I hope you did learn some new stitches and maybe a few new techniques. Even if you are experienced, maybe you learned something new. I always say if you only learn one new thing, it was worth taking a class. All right, our next project is going to be next week, this cute little gray pillow. It's a little bowl filler that is a present with some holly on it. And right here it says 2. And we use some chenille yarn to go ahead and go all the way around it. So I'm going to show you how to do this in our next class next week. All right, thank you everyone. You have a fantastic day and don't forget, be inspired.